All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my lecture on Act 1 of Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. So, real quick, how many of you read the intro? Huh? No? Yeah, I think so. All right. So, the preface that Shaw hits here on Pygmalion is really about some of the background of why he wrote this and some of the inspiration for Pygmalion. Particularly the fact that some of these characters are based on real people, particularly Henry Higgins, the phoneticist, or the professor of phonetics, as he is. So it would be worth skimming through. Just gonna go ahead and put that out there. Particularly, I think one of the things that strikes me is the way he talks about the role of phonetics. And a little bit of trivia in case it didn't come up. In your author bio, when he died, he actually left a bequest for anyone who could come up with a phonetic alphabet within so many letters. And I think someone finally won it in the 90s, which was kind of cool. So he says towards the end of this preface, before Act 1 begins, "Finally, and for the encouragement of people troubled with accents that cut them off from all high employment, I may add that the change wrought by Professor Higgins in the Flower Girl is neither impossible nor uncommon. The modern concierge's daughter, who fulfills her ambition by playing the Queen of Spain in Rue Blas on the Théâtre Français, is only one of many thousands of men and women who have sloughed off their native dialects and acquired new tongue." So he's talking about the idea that yes, our accents can sometimes prevent us from achieving or being accepted in different parts of society, but that doesn't mean we can't change that. But he also says an honest and natural slum dialect is more tolerable than the attempt of a phonetically untaught person to imitate the vulgar dialect of the golf club. And so he also sort of is just mentioning here, like, being honest to who you are and what you know. So, Act 1. Covent Garden at 11:15 p.m. Torrents of heavy summer rain, cab whistles blowing frantically in all directions, pedestrians running for shelter into the market under the portico of St. Paul's Church, where there are already several people, among them a lady and her daughter in evening dress. They are all peering out gloomily at the rain, except one man with his back turned to the rest, who seems wholly preoccupied with a notebook in which he's writing busily. So here we have stage direction setting our scene, and if you'll notice, compared to our Oscar Wilde, it's a lot more. Wilde gave us maybe 2-3 sentences, and we're only going to get more as this goes. Part of that is because, Shaw is writing in an era a little later than Wilde, not by much, but a couple decades, and so realism was gaining a much greater traction in theater. You had people who could afford to do these big, more detailed sets. You also had public interest a little greater, and so particularly the idea of portraying the lives of middle-class society as opposed to the rich and the elite, which was common, or, in Wilde's case, biblical elite, which is more common in previous theater. Previous eras of the theater. So our setting here is outdoors, a portico, St. Paul's Church, and a portico, of course, just is overhanging. And so the question is, why this setting? Now, much of what happens in this chapter is interaction between a few characters who are named based on traits that they have. For instance, the daughter, the mother, bystander, note taker, flower girl, the gentleman, things like that. And so they're all coming from different classes, different walks of life. How do you bring an intersection of people together like this? Well, make it rain, right? Force people who are passing by on the streets into one smaller area where they have to interact. And of course, London, very known for its rain, which I will say from personal experience is not as frequent as they make it out to be. You just get a lot of little spatterings of sprinkles. It's not constantly rainy like they say it is. But anyway, St. Paul's Church, for those who are familiar, is a large cathedral church in London. It is a little bit as close to the original 1 mile square of London City, which is now much bigger than that original 1 mile that marked London. But one of the things I think that's interesting about picking St. Paul's is, as a church, as a religious setting, is already prone to having more diverse representation of people. as well as the fact that it marks sort of an intersection of several neighborhoods and areas of London, particularly St. Paul's being a barrier towards where you start getting to East London, which was the rundown, shabby, impoverished areas, to, on the other side being Covent Garden, to central and western side of London, which is more highbrow, more theater, more artistic, a little more middle class. And so it's a nice little intersection of those. So the idea that people would be coming up and down that street on the Strand makes a lot of sense. So again, as we mentioned, the characters are identified primarily by something that's obvious about them: the mother, the daughter, the bystander, the note taker. Why do you think this is? Why is it in a play in which, if we're looking at how the actors are reading this versus what we see, we're going to know, or we would expect that the actors would know their characters' names. But Shaw doesn't start with that. So even while we're reading it, we're getting a similar impression as the actors would going through, versus what we would see during the performance. So putting them through these traits, we're looking at dialogue tags based on what's visible, not personable, right? We're not getting any names. So again, he's sort of imparting a similar path to how we do meet people. We assess them based on what kind of class or status they hold, right? So even his dialogue tags are doing that, showing us that we're judging people, that we put them into categories, right? Now, the mother and daughter, they're adorable, aren't they? The fact that they send Freddie off, like, oh, heaven forbid they get wet or have to walk in the rain. So they send Freddie, the son and brother, off to find them a cab. But in the process, he has a collision on page 9 with the flower girl, right? Now, reading this, you're probably going to look at these lines and be like, what is she saying? Because, yeah, it's written in dialect, meaning it's written as it sounds, the phonetics of how it sounds, right? Which is a big part of what this story is about, the role that our dialect accents play in how we're perceived, right? So here we go. Now then, Freddie, look what you done there. There's manners for you, 2 branches of violets tied in the mud. My favorite, of course, being when she says, oh, he's your son, is he? Well, if you done your duty by him as a merchant, he'd know better spoil poor girl's flowers and run away out paying. Will you pay for me? Now, even orally, that was probably unintelligible because that is part of the thickness of her accent. So again, we go back through. Now then, Freddie, look where you're going there. Now then, Freddie, look where you're going there. There's manners for you, 2 bunches of violets trod in mud. There's manners for you, 2 bunches of violets trod into the mud. Oh, he's your son, is he? Oh, he's your son, is he? Well, if you done your duty by him as the mother should, he'd know better than spoil poor girl's flowers and run away without paying. Well, if you done your duty by him as a mother should, he'd know better than to spill a poor girl's flowers than run away without paying. Will you pay for them? Will you pay me for them? Right? So, and even Shaw acknowledges that it's impossible to really understand what she's saying. Here, with apologies, this desperate attempt to represent her dialect without a phonetic alphabet must be abandoned as unintelligible outside London. So he's basically saying that her accent's so thick that except for Londoners who are used to hearing this and reading this, no one's going to understand what she's saying. And so we see a very real barrier here between Eliza, or the flower girl, as we know her now, being understood. Right? And that's a problem because the whole point is we want people to understand us. We also get a lot of details about how she looks. And of course, these details do remind us that she's in a different class than the characters she's now interacting with, particularly the mother and the daughter, who are a bit nervous that Eliza, the flower girl, knows their son brother's name, Freddie. How do you know his name? Oh my goodness. How would he ever know a street urchin like you? And we see that the way in which we create these boundaries in society. This is, by the way, going to be a little quick test for how many of you actually watch this video. Under random on Slack, if you post a short little video trying to read the Flower Girl's lines on page 9 in the dialect, I'll give you some bonus points under your participation category. So again, just posting a short video of you reading it, or the audio is fine too, under Slack, under the random channel. And if you try that, see if you can best my accent. Think you can do the Flower Girl better than me. Go ahead and yeah, I'll give you an opportunity for bonus points, and I'll also know that you watched this video. Yay! All right, so a little bonus buried in here. Then we get into, she ends up convincing the mother and the daughter, the Flower Girl does, to buy her flowers, right? So she does have some wit. Even if we can't understand her, even if she looks a little less than some of the other characters, she clearly knows how to handle herself. She understands the environment that she's in. And they continue taking, and then the note taker begins to gather attention. Particularly that he is taking notes, and it's like, oh, you're writing down what I say. And again, keep in mind in this era, particularly if you're impoverished, the idea of police surveillance is a little scary. She doesn't have the agency to fight back if she were to be arrested. There's also the implication that, is she legally selling these flowers? Does she have permission to do so? Or are they going to mistake her for selling herself? Which was a common issue in the era, was prostitution. And so Eliza, the Flower Girl, has legit concerns about her safety and like, is she going to be arrested? But of course, the note taker really doesn't understand her perspective. Instead, he finds her a little silly for overreacting, while the rest of them are really fairly impressed at the note taker's skill and his ability to see or to be able to identify where they're from. And so we have the first setup here of our main characters. The note taker, of course, we're going to learn is Professor Henry Higgins. The gentleman, of course, we're going to learn is Colonel Pickering. These, bachelors who decide to live together and learn about phonetics together. As well as the fact that the Flower Girl is considered beneath them, that they really don't have the patience for her. But they also set up what is going to be our catalyst for our plot, which is their comment that the note taker makes on page 16. You see this creature with her curbstone English, the English that will keep her in the gutter to the end of her days. Well, sir, in 3 months I could pass that girl off as a duchess at an ambassador's garden party. I could even get her placed as a lady's maid or shop assistant, which requires a better English. That's the sort of thing I do for commercial millionaires, and the profits of it I do genuine scientific work in phonetics, and a little as a poet on Miltonic lines, sorry. So again, here he's boasting of his abilities, right? Note taker, so sure of himself, so confident in what he can do. Oh, see this gutter snipe who talks so poorly, no one would ever hire her for a good position. Well, I could pass her off for a duchess. That's how good I am at transforming people, how good I am at teaching people to act a certain way, to essentially disguise themselves into another class through language. And so essentially it's reinforcing that language is a barrier to class. It's a marker of class, particularly in the sense that it's often a marker of education, which was mostly only accessible to those of higher class. But also it's part of his bombacity. What kind of character is Henry Higgins? And essentially he's going to put his foot in his mouth here, because in Act 2, Liza's going to come and collect on this potential offer because she believes him and she has high ambitions for herself. And I think that we can kind of see that in the way that she leaves. She picks up her money at the end of page 17, still making those laugh. Ooh. But Freddie comes back with the cab, and Liza, the Flower Girl, takes it, right? She's not one to suffer now that she has opportunity, and the fact that she's willing to take advantage of an opportunity when it presents itself. She's going to take the cab. She's going to follow up on Henry Higgins. She's going to make something of herself than being this gutter snipe that he sees or has. And so again, we get an initial impression of our characters before we really know who they are as people. Again, it's about their station. It's about the role that they play and how other people interact with them. And of course, putting them in this St. Paul's awning so that they are forced to do so. So that's essentially the gist of what Act 1 is about, setting the catalyst, again, for our plot, that Eliza believes that Henry can make her into something better, and whether or not he's willing to actually do what he says he can. Her ambition and his ego come into play for the rest of the story. So, read the rest. Make sure to finish your background. Yeah, it's Black Friday. It's Friday. And of course, next week is when we'll actually get into discussion, and I'm probably going to be spreading it out over 2 days this time. I think the longer period didn't work as much, so we'll split it into 2 days. Just make sure that you come in to comment at least once each day. That's really what I'm looking for. So things to keep note of as we look, again, the role of class, the barriers of language, and some of Shaw's style, how he creates these characters, what sort of ideologies they have, and how he describes things himself. So, all right, good luck, and we'll get more into Act 2 and so forth next week.